I think what makes the Sodder case so psychologically devastating is that most people misunderstand where the real wound actually opened. They hear fire, and their attention goes immediately to the flames, to destruction, to the vanishing, to the spectacle of what can be seen. But psychologically, the fire was only the threshold, the point of entry. The true trauma was what stayed behind after it was over. Absence without certainty. And human beings are not designed to inhabit that condition for long. Because when something catastrophic happens, the nervous system begins, almost instantly, to recruit order. It tries to arrange reality into something that can be endured. Even grief has a kind of architecture. Even pain, when it is complete, has sequence. This happened. Someone is gone. This is now what my life contains. Even terrible truths can be metabolized psychologically, because they have borders. They have edges. They close. Finality, while cruel, gives the mind something to hold. But ambiguity has no perimeter. It diffuses. It migrates. It seeps into memory, into thinking, into the quiet corners of a day where the mind, without permission, begins searching again. And I think that is why the Sodder case never truly died. Because the family was never psychologically allowed to finish grieving. There were no bodies. No remains. No definitive confirmation. No event the mind could name as complete. There was only a vacancy, filled with possibilities. And possibilities become dangerous when they are attached to love. Because once hope enters grief, the mind is trapped between two incompatible realities. One reality says, "They are gone." The other doesn't argue, it whispers. "But what if they are still out there?" And the whisper is often the one that survives. The whisper can colonize a lifetime. I think about Jenny Sodder especially. A mother waking on Christmas Eve inside what should have been one of the safest emotional environments imaginable. Children upstairs. Familiar warmth. Routine. The ordinary shelter of family life. The kind of night that teaches the brain, quietly, that home is reliable. And then, suddenly, reality fractures. Not slowly. Not logically. But violently. That kind of rupture alters the brain's relationship with safety forever. Because once catastrophe enters the home, the mind can no longer experience home as it once did. After that, safety becomes conditional. Temporary. Fragile. Something you test, rather than something you assume. And George Sodder reveals another dimension entirely. A man whose identity was built out of protection, work, structure, provision, control. Men like that often carry an unspoken internal belief that vigilance can keep chaos at a distance. That if they sacrifice enough, plan enough, anticipate enough, they can hold a perimeter around the people they love. And then something happens that no preparation can prevent. Psychologically, that doesn't feel like a simple failure. It can feel like an implosion of self. Like identity collapsing under the weight of one sentence. I could not protect them. That sentence can live inside a person for decades. Not as a thought, but as a condition. A private corrosion. But I think this case exposes something even deeper about human beings in general. We tend to think closure is about answers. It isn't. Closure is about containment. It is about the nervous system understanding where the pain belongs, where to place it so it stops moving. How to stop scanning for motion inside something that may already be over. The Sodder family never had a place to put their pain, so their grief stayed active. Mobile. Searching. And eventually, the search itself became a form of emotional survival. The billboard. The investigations. The reported sightings. The letters. The theories. Those weren't only acts of inquiry. They were acts of psychological preservation. Because as long as uncertainty remained alive, emotional finality could be delayed. And I think many people listening have lived some version of this, in quieter forms. Maybe not through disappearance. Maybe not through tragedy at this scale. But through questions that never received a response. Relationships that ended without explanation. Losses that never became emotionally coherent. Moments where the world changed faster than the mind could reorganize itself to match. What this case teaches is that human beings can endure pain more readily than they can endure fragmentation. We can adapt to brutal truths. What destabilizes us is incoherence. The inability to organize what happened into a shape the psyche can hold. That is why unresolved trauma lingers for years, sometimes for generations. Not because the event remains physically present, but because the nervous system never completed the process of making meaning, never finished the work of integration. And maybe that is the lesson underneath the Sodder case. Sometimes healing is not the arrival of certainty. Sometimes healing is the recognition that certainty may never arrive, and the decision, still, to continue living. Not because the questions disappear. Not because grief evaporates. But because a life cannot remain indefinitely trapped inside the pursuit of an answer that may never come. That is the danger of unresolved grief. Left untouched, it can slowly transform a human being into a permanent search party for a moment that no longer exists. And then, eventually, people stop living forward. They begin living backward, searching emotionally through smoke, trying to retrieve what the fire already changed forever. This is the missing why.